in search of raw material. Now we discussed that there were craftsmen who used to work in their workshops. There were men and women who used to work at their home in order to perform their craft and make goods out of it. For example, cloth, pots, tools, etc. But where did the raw material come from? To make all these things, you need some raw material, doesn't it? So, for example, for making cloth, you need yarn and thread. Where did this come from? For making yarn, you need cotton, raw cotton. Where did raw cotton come from? So, let's have a look at it. Raw materials are substances that are either found naturally or are made by men artificially, produced by farmers and herders. Raw materials are the substances which are provided by the nature or are either man-made, which are used to produce finished goods and commodities. For example, cotton, produced by farmers. Cotton is a material which is provided by nature and is produced by farmers. So, this cotton, this raw material is used to make thread and yarn, which is then later on used by weavers in order to weave and make cloth. Later on, there are craftsmen who make beautiful kind of clothing items such as blouse and dhotis. The raw materials that the Harappans used, some of them were made available locally in the markets and stores, whereas some other materials such as metals like copper, gold, silver, precious stones, they were brought in from different places in the Indian subcontinent. So, here have a look at the places where these materials were found. So, copper was found in the Rajasthan area and Oman in West Asia. Bronze and copper, tin, these were mixed together to make a new metal which was used to make tools. This was found mainly in Afghanistan and Iran. Gold was found mainly in Karnataka. Precious stone, they were found in Gujarat, Iran and Afghanistan. Let's talk about terracotta. In the early part of the chapter, we discussed that there were terracotta toys that were discovered by archaeologists. So, terracotta cart found in Harappan site. It looks something like this. So, these are seals which show that mode of transportation was used in the Harappan era. Now, let's talk about food for these people. There were people who used to practice craft, who were developing their trade and business, and they had already made and settled in different kind of houses and buildings. But what did they used to eat at that time? There were people, cities and countries. In the country, in a continent, in the Indian subcontinent, there were different kind of cities located at different parts. So food was made available to them. How? What material of food? Were there any differences from one city to another? Let's take a good look. So, there were cities. Cities were formed from traders, craftspersons, rulers, scribes, etc. So, these were the people who were mainly living in these cities who needed to be fed. Traders were engaged in trading and exchange of goods and services. Craftspersons were the one who used to make finished goods and products. Rulers used to rule and supervise the construction, whereas scribes, these were the people who used to make seals and teach people how to make seals. On the countryside, so not in the cities, there is a countryside also. For example, in today's time we have cities, and in the outer portion of cities there are villages and countryside where farmers and herders used to work. So, just if you compare early era with today's era, there are farmers who produced food, who laid down and sow food items, grains, pulses, vegetables, fruits, etc. At that time also there were farmers who used to live outside the city. They built farms where they used to produce food, and this food was then transported to the cities in order to feed all these people. Food for people in the cities. There were people living in cities such as rulers, craftspersons, scribes, etc. These people were fed by the food which was grown by the farmers. What kind of food did the Harappans used to eat? The grains mainly consisted of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, peas, etc. Sesame and linseed were common seeds which were used at that time to extract oil and make vegetables out of it. Mustard was also one seed which was thoroughly used and cooked about in that time. So, plow. So, in order to induce farming and irrigation, a new tool, plow, was developed at that time. What is a plow? Here you can see in a picture what a plow looks like in the early era. So, the plow we use today is quite different from the plow that was available at that time. It was used to dig up earth. So if a farmer wants to sow seeds, he wants to put the seeds on the earth, he needs to dig up that soil, isn't it, to make it more fertile, to planting the seeds. So this was the equipment that was used by the farmers to dig up the soil. They were probably made of wood or iron. Water was stored and supplied to fields so that the seeds could get water in order to grow and harvest the crops. The Harappan reared. Apart from farming, there was also a practice of rearing. What is rearing? Rearing is taking responsibility of cattle such as sheep, goat, buffalo, cows, etc. So these were the animals that were reared at that time. They provided us with meat, milk and other products. Water and pastures were available for these animals. In the dry summer months, large herds of animals were probably taken to greater distances in search of water and food. They also hunted at the same time in order to get meat to feed the people. So they used to fish, they caught fish and gathered fruits as well. So the common fruit that was gathered at that time was bear.